For 7 long years, Israel lived in fear. The Midianites raided every harvest, swarming like locusts over the land. Crops were stolen, livestock driven away, villages burned. When the Israelites planted seed, the enemy waited for it to sprout, then descended to trample and take. Families hid in caves and carved shelters into the hills. Hope rotted like wheat left too long in the sun. And in that despair lived Gideon, a young man from Manasseh, threshing wheat in secret behind a winepress. Every swing of his stick against the grain was quiet, cautious, desperate. He wasn't dreaming of heroism, he was trying to keep dinner safe. That's where heaven found him. One hot afternoon, a stranger sat under an oak tree near the winepress, watching. His eyes carried an authority that seemed older than time. He said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon froze mid-motion, almost laughing. "Pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all the wonders our ancestors told us about? The Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hands of Midian." The stranger stood and looked at him with a calm power. "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" Gideon blinked. He stammered, "But my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Then the visitor replied, "I will be with you," and everything changed. The angel of the Lord revealed his glory in fire that consumed Gideon's offering. Terrified, Gideon realized he had spoken with the Almighty and lived. He built an altar there and called it "The Lord is Peace." That night, peace turned into purpose. God commanded him to tear down his father's altar to Baal, the false god that Israel had begun to worship, and to build a proper altar to the Lord. It was a bold, dangerous order. Gideon obeyed, but under cover of darkness. He used his father's bull to pull down the altar, smashed the idols, and built a new altar with the stones. When morning came, the town erupted in anger. Who did this? They demanded. When they learned it was Gideon, they wanted to kill him. But Gideon's father, Joash, stood firm. If Baal really is a god, let him defend himself. From that day, Gideon was known across Israel. Word spread. A man had defied the idols. A man had dared to believe again. Not long after, Midian's armies crossed into the valley tents, stretching like a sea of sand. Swords glinting under the sun, Gideon blew the trumpet to call Israel's tribes together. The same man who once hid behind a winepress now stood in the open valley of Jezreel, surrounded by 32,000 men answering his call. But God's voice came again. "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast, 'My own strength has saved me.' Too many soldiers in a war." Gideon's mouth went dry. Still, he obeyed. God told him, "Announce that anyone who trembles with fear may turn back." 22,000 men went home, 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said, "There are still too many." He directed Gideon to take the men down to the river to drink. Those who scooped water into their hands and stayed alert would go to battle. Those who knelt completely were dismissed. When the counting finished, only 300 men remained. 300 against an army as numerous as locusts. It was madness or miracle in disguise. That night, God told Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp. I have given it into your hands, but if you are afraid, go down and listen." So Gideon crept with his servant through the darkness, nearer to the enemy's fires. They stopped outside a tent, and inside they heard one man say, "I had a dream. A round loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp and struck a tent with such force that it collapsed." His companion replied, "This must be the sword of Gideon. God has given Midian into his hands." Gideon's eyes widened. He fell to his knees right there in the darkness and worshipped. Fear fled, faith rose. He returned to his camp and shouted, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. Into each hand he placed a trumpet and an empty jar with a torch inside it. No swords, no shields, only faith and fire. At the middle watch of the night, they surrounded the valley. Then, at Gideon's signal, they blew their trumpets, smashed their jars, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Flames erupted around the valley like stars fallen to the ground. The Midianite army panicked, thinking they were ambushed by thousands. Confused and terrified, they turned their swords on each other. Chaos rippled through the camp. By morning, the enemy was fleeing, trampled under divine confusion. Israel pursued and captured their leaders? The land that had starved for 7 years finally saw peace. Gideon's story begins with fear and ends with faith, but the miracle isn't that he became strong, it's that God used him while he was still weak. God called him a mighty warrior while he was hiding in a wine press. That's how heaven speaks, not to who you appear, but to who you're becoming. When Gideon said, "I can't," God said, "I'll go with you." And that is still the greatest promise. The reduction from thousands to 300 wasn't a strategy mistake, it was God rewriting Israel's dependence. Sometimes he subtracts so he can multiply. Sometimes he removes support so that victory can only point one direction, upward. What jars and torches you hold may look ridiculous to the world, but in God's hands they're enough to scatter armies. We all begin in that hidden place and sure, exhausted, maybe threshing our meager hope behind fear's walls. But when God calls your name and says, "Mighty warrior," don't argue, stand up. Your courage doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to listen. Because when ordinary faith blows the trumpet, heaven does the fighting. Gideon learned that victory wasn't about numbers or strength, it was about obedience. And every one of us has a Midian to face a fear larger than our resources. So raise your torch, blow your trumpet, step into the valley even when it doesn't make sense. Because the God who turned a trembling farmer into a deliverer hasn't changed. He still finds people hiding in small places and sees potential where others see weakness. He still turns fear into faith and scarcity into song. The story of Gideon isn't ancient history, it's a mirror, proof that the weakest warrior can still lead when God leads first.